areas would flood again, causing life along the coast to be impossible. If it were any further away...
Yeah. We get this. If things were different, they would be different, and we would not be able to have life as we know it.
If things were different, they would be different.
Yeah.
I love that.
Well,
Yeah.
Well, no, but I mean, even the his whole assertion, which I'm guessing that he's talking about the moon being closer to the Earth, because I mean, the moon has been closer to the Earth in the evolution of things. I mean, right now the moon is receding, or the orbit is getting bigger by about 4 centimeters a year, but you know that amount hasn't remained constant through time, and in the past, like even if it remained constant in the past, like a billion years ago, it would have only shifted by like 40,000 miles. And right. So I mean, like instead of it being 384,000 miles from the Earth, now it's just 348 or something like that. Like it's not that big of a difference. Like he wants to act like it being that much closer because 40,000 miles sounds huge. Which I mean it is, but in comparison to like the moon's actual distance from the Earth, it's not that big. Like that's only like 9 or 10% of the actual distance. So I don't think that the wave, like the tides, would have been so great that life couldn't have evolved on Earth. By 1 billion years ago, life was already evolved onto the land. So I don't. I get that he's using people's scientific ignorance against them to convince them that evolution is a ridiculous thing, and he's coming at it through almost every single facet of science that he can. But I just really wish people would actually educate themselves on these things.
Yeah, and as well, he's more or less pointing out that everything is the way is exactly how it should be to form life as we know it. But if the universe, did form a different way, if our planet was different in some way, what's to say that we wouldn't evolve to be a different sort of form of life or kind of being?
I agree. Yeah. I mean, I think that life would just have evolved differently.
Yeah.
Then ocean life would stagnate because there would be no ocean tides. And if the Earth's surface gravity were any greater or any less, the orbit of the Earth would be interrupted and many things would have collided with the Earth, possibly causing us not even to be able to live on the Earth anymore. Something that's just absolutely...
Or we'd just be a little heavier or a little lighter. Like, I mean, it would have to be, like, significant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, he says a little greater or a little less, and that's not really accurate.
Oh, yeah.
Crazy to me is the composition of the atmosphere, the air you and I breathe in. Everybody take a deep breath. You just breathed in a perfect combination of 4 gases. Nitrogen, oxygen, CO2,
this is bullshit.
and argon.
Yeah. Like we evolved to fit our environment, not the other way around.
Well, right. But I mean, even like levels of shit in the atmosphere change all the time and we can still fucking breathe.
Right, yeah.
I mean, there's various different like mixtures of gases in different cities. Like, I mean, I want to say like it's in China maybe that is the most polluted atmosphere.
It's terrible. They have to wear those masks, all the smog.
Right. And so, I mean, over there, I mean, people over a long period of time, I guess they could eventually become tolerant of like whatever gases are in the air over there. But I mean, for the most part, I mean, they have evolved, like our human evolution has evolved to breathe a certain kind of atmosphere because that's just what's here on the Earth.
Yeah. And even people who like live like at much higher elevations, like on mountains and stuff, the air they breathe is different than being it. Yeah, it's thinner. And that's definitely different from here at or around sea level. I actually think I'm below sea level where I'm at. But anyway, we do have this range of air that it can breathe. But if our atmosphere was different, then we definitely could have evolved differently to breathe different air.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if any of those gases were any greater or any less, if that composition were somehow messed with and there was a higher concentration of one gas than the other, your body would not be able to function like it does. Not only that, but that atmospheric, that perfect kind of compound, that all of that came together just by sheer chance, to me, seems a little far-fetched.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, he's essentially, I mean, this doesn't make any kind of like scientific sense for him to even say, because it's like, well, if things were different now, then we wouldn't be able to live. No fucking shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like to think that, okay, I think it would be crazy to go throughout the whole universe, choose, like pick a random one, just drawing planets, out of a hat. I choose this one, and betting that that one planet will have life on it, right? But like I said, there are so many circumstances, so many possible like variations of planets, and we've seen that life can definitely form on its own. So it's not crazy to think that because of the probability and the sheer amount of planets that we have in the universe, it's not crazy to think that there would be one out of all of them that does have life. In fact, there's probably, several in our galaxy, which, we haven't been able to find, but just by sheer numbers, it is definitely probable.
I agree. A lot of people don't understand how probability works because it's not like, since it has a low probability, that means it's never going to happen.
Right.
That is the likelihood that it will happen or how often something happens. And if you have a small probability but a large set in which something to happen, then it's like 100% going to happen.
Right, yeah. And another thing is that they're kind of doing probability backwards. They're like, let's say somebody wins the lottery, because somebody wins the lottery, right? You go to the lottery winner and say, oh, there was like a 1 in how many millions of chances that you actually won the lottery? I don't think you won it because of how improbable it is. Probability doesn't work that way. Like, once you've come to a result, you can't then work backwards to say, oh, that was highly improbable. It must not have happened that way. No, evidently it did happen. And just because it would be improbable from an outside perspective, looking in on this one part, yeah, you would think that's improbable beforehand. But since it's happened, this is still a good explanation.
Not only that, let's look at something that you and I are using right this second, your eye.
Oh, Lord.
Have you ever look at the human eye and actually observe it and look at all the
our eyes are designed to work underwater, but that's okay. I mean, our eyes evolved underwater eyes. Our eyes are actually really piss poor design, but that's okay. Like, we can continue.
Yeah, like squid's eyes are better than ours.
Right. There's actually a really good video out there by Dawkins.
Oh yeah.
Where he explains like the evolution of the eye and how it likely makes sense with the different kinds of eyes that we find in nature now. So, I mean, it's not that like it's perfectly designed. If it was perfectly designed, why would we need fucking glasses?
Yeah, exactly. And there are actually a couple videos like that. Not all of them are from Dawkins, but I've seen a few where they actually give a good explanation as to how the eye can evolve. So if any of you out there are interested, look it up. I don't feel like explaining it.
Of it, what we would see is the human eye has more than 2 million working parts.
Okay, irreducible complexity.
Those little symbols that we call letters, and combining it together with the other letters to form words that's sending information to your brain to help you decode that information. That's all moving million photoreceptors. Those are light-sensitive cells. And your retina, just simply one part of your eye, contains 130 million rods for night vision and 7 million color-sensitive cones for day vision. And if your eye...
Yeah, that's a large number of stuff in your eye, but that's just how small these cells and stuff are. It's not it's not like you need a designer to have like a whole bunch of stuff at once.
Come on, Heath. 130 million rods, therefore God. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I feel like this is just like a big numberism. Like he just throws big numbers at people in order to make it sound so improbable, and it's really a disingenuous way to even address the problem.
Yeah.
To address.
And any of those parts are just a little bit tweaked, then your whole body feels the effects of it. This is so intricately designed. This is so detailed that it would cause one British naturalist to say this about the eye.
One British naturalist. He's probably not a nationalist.
Said to suppose that the eye, with all of its inimitable contrivances for adjusting the focus to different distances, for emitting different amounts of light, and for the correction of spherical and chromatic aberration, could have been formed by natural selection seems, I freely confess, absurd in the highest sense.
Why? We need to be able to fucking see and see how far away we are from other shit so we don't run into it, and see at night so we don't fucking get eaten. Like, why is this so difficult to comprehend?
And I also like how sorry, go ahead, Heath.
I think it's difficult to comprehend because you're looking at the final product. You're looking at what it has come to be up to this point. So it's kind of hard to, just look at the eye itself and think of how it could have formed without looking at this in the perspective of, the past history. And when you do look into the past of how animals have evolved, how we came out of water, how fish needed to see, and how pupils dilating, that, and all this stuff, how it could have came about. Once you look at it in that sort of small parts, like small changes over long periods of time, each that were beneficial could lead us up to this point. It's really tough to come to that just looking at the eye itself and all its intricacies. It's easy to be amazed by it without really knowing how it could have formed that way.
Right. I just want to point this out. So I typed in the first couple lines of the quote here. This is actually from Charles Darwin. And it's an out of context quote because the quote stops.
Oh.
And then it goes on to say, when it was first said that the sun stood still and the world turned, the common sense of mankind declared the doctrine false. But the old saying of vox populi, vox dei, the voice of the people equals the voice of God, as every philosopher knows, cannot be trusted in science. Reason tells me that if numerous gradations from a simple to an imperfect eye to a complex and perfect one can be shown to exist, each grade being useful to its possessor, as is certain the case, if further the eye ever varies and the variations be inherited, as is likewise certainly the case, and if such variations should be useful to any animal under changing conditions of life, then the difficulty of believing that a perfect and complex eye could be formed by natural selection should not be considered as subversive of the theory.
Yeah, so basically he says the first part, I see how you can think it would be absurd. But just because it's complex, if these things are useful, which is what I was saying too, if these things are useful for survival, then it's not really that out of question,
Yeah, I love it when they quote Darwin. I bet he's gonna say in a minute here, and that man was Darwin himself. Darwin would have gotten rid of his ideas if he was alive today. But I love it when they quote Darwin, because it's always stuff like this. It's always so out of context. And if you look at it in context, then right after it, he explains exactly what they're arguing against. I love it. And that's like every time, because Darwin, there's a lot of quotes like this. Like, you could say this, you could say that, and here's why my idea still holds up. But they always they love to cherry pick Darwin. It's amazing.
We're amening Charles Darwin, which is a bit ironic.
Told you.
The author of Origin of the Species, the person that first came up with the theory of evolution. So when we look at everything in the created order,
he didn't first come up with the theory of evolution. The ideas of evolution, they existed before Darwin, but Darwin really expounded upon it, especially with natural selection. That's not exactly where the idea started, though.
True.
We say it's sheer chance. It's a huge assumption. It's a huge speculation. In fact, statistics themselves do not support it. Let's go back to the primordial soup theory of how life began.
Oh, Lord.
Everything in this primordial soup, the different chemicals came together to form protein molecules. Well, that sounds a convenient way to explain how life began, but here's the problem. The odds of a single protein molecule forming by chance is 1 in 10 to the 113th power.
Out of what? The probability.
I really hate this.
Yeah, forming out of what? Out of the planets? Is that the chances of this forming within the planet? Because there are billions of planets within our galaxy alone. Is this the probability of this forming in like a certain volume of water? Because there's loads of water in there were lots of area of water that had lots of varying conditions. Is it ridiculous to think that there could be one of these conditions in one of these areas of water in one of these planets in one of these galaxies out of all of it?
Yeah, I agree. Vague, using big numbers in order to wow people into being like, oh yeah, that's really improbable, without putting it in the correct context.
Unprobable.
Unprobable. Sorry, not I'm using English. I'm sorry.
I'm also curious as to how they came to this number. Who came to this number and how?
I don't know. I've heard this kind of shit many times, though. So I don't know. They probably use each other's shit, and I don't know where it originally came from.
Yeah.
Now that seems, well, that's pretty crazy odds. Well, here's what's even crazier. A single cell that is needed to be self-replicating single-cell organism is comprised of millions of protein molecules. It would be like you waking up every single day and look, I won the lottery, but I didn't even buy a ticket. I found a winning lottery ticket on the ground every single day for the rest of your life. So statistically...
Wait, it cut out for us. What did he find on the ground?
Like a lottery ticket. If you just find the winning lottery ticket on the ground every day, he's saying that's how improbable it would be.
I feel like he's gonna come up with the fucking peanut butter analogy soon.
Well, yeah, but if every day you 100 trillion lottery tickets up in the air, I mean, sure, somebody would eventually find that lottery. I mean,
somebody's gonna find the winner.
Yeah. So I mean, his analogy, because you would have to put it into a comparable context, you'd have to try to transpose it to something that would actually be like what it's like being in the universe.
Yeah.
Speaking, it is almost mathematically impossible for us to look at that and say all of this came together by sheer chance, by the statistical lottery being won.
Again, you're working backwards. You're starting with the winning lottery ticket and then working back how improbable it would be. We pretty much covered this. Let's skip a bit.
Well, then there's the problem of morality. And the problem is, if we are nothing more than highly evolved carbon-based life forms,
okay,
how do we explain the fact that all people recognize some moral code? That some things are right and some things are wrong. Everyone holds to that assertion. If you don't believe them, they say, well, no, morality is relative. Try stealing from them and see what they say. Right?
Well, no, I mean, not everybody has the same moral beliefs. Even in Christianity itself, not everybody has the same moral beliefs. So, I mean, for him to say that it's all written on our hearts, I mean, it's simply not realistic.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's saying that everybody has a sense of right and wrong. Not only is it different for everybody, so there's no reason to think that there's an outside governing ethereal body telling us what's right and wrong, but it's like everybody has a sense of, say, happy and sad. Do we need a god to give us a sense of happiness and sadness? Do we need a god to feel emotions or intuitions in general? Or is that
No, I
something
mean,
that could have been evolved?
well, I mean, animals feel those intuitions and things like that, and they don't have gods that we know of. I mean, I
Right.
don't know what the fuck they talk about. I'm just saying. It's so, I mean, to say that is just stupid.
Yeah. I do wonder if there are dolphins who are like praying to the big sky dolphin.
I don't know. Maybe.
You just wronged me. Well, who says that's wrong? Every one of us knows some things are right and some things are wrong. That is an undeniable, observable truth that you and I both agree on.
Well, yeah, but society dictates what's right and wrong.
Mhm.
And the society that you're in can be different than a society all the way across the world. An indigenous society is going to be different in as far as what they think is right and wrong versus one that is more technologically developed. Like, I mean, there's a whole lot that goes into that. Objective morality is not a thing. There is no concrete right and wrong.
Right.
And also, I would say that we, like me and this pastor here, could definitely find that we have different sets of moral values.
Oh yeah.
So, no, not everything that I think is moral and immoral, you're going to agree with is moral and immoral. So, I mean, we're both working off different foundations. So you're just as subjective as I'm subjective. That's what I would say to him.
And every time we argue over what is right, and every time we argue what is wrong, we appeal to a higher law that we assume everyone is aware of.
No, we don't. We argue based on what we feel, and we argue for our position.
Well, yeah, and it says, and is not, the last line, and is not free to arbitrarily change. That's bullshit. It's arbitrarily changed throughout history, and that shit is documented.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, this is bullshit.
Everyone holds to, and we're not free to arbitrarily change. Well, I stole from you because I didn't have one. Okay, it doesn't make it right. I just changed it. Well, okay, that doesn't. We're saying that there is a higher law, and in saying there's a higher law, and there's a higher standard of law, that requires a law giver.
Except that this is not that kind of law, so no.
Right. I don't think that creators of this abstract concept such as morality, it doesn't need some kind of, like, any ultimate authority you can think of has people that are speaking on behalf of it. It's never like God actually saying it or anything. It's just people that are in powerful positions are saying, yeah, God says this is bad, so don't do it.
Exactly.
Because the moral law transcends humanity. This universal law requires a universal lawgiver.
Then why don't we universally agree on the death penalty or on abortion? If it's so universal, why is it not so universal? If it's not arbitrarily changing, then why does it arbitrarily change so much? I'm waiting for him to bring up Nazis again. Swear if he does.
What's interesting is anytime an individual uses the words you should or you shouldn't say that, or you shouldn't do that, or you should probably give this, or you should probably treat me this way, they are implying a belief that morality is absolute. And if there is no God, who is to say what is right or wrong?
That is a pretty deep philosophical question.
Yeah.
I don't really have the answer to it, but it doesn't mean that there was a God outside to give it to us.
Well, I feel like society kind of dictates what we find to be right and wrong. Like, society in that, we all have our own individual systems that we consider to be right and wrong. And it's when we find commonality with other people and their own moral systems in which we build a society on a foundation of agreed upon moral rights and wrongs. So, like, to say if there is no God, who is to say what is right or wrong? I would say that it's the exact same place that we get it, even if you consider there to be a God. It's still a bunch of people collectively agreeing these rights and wrongs. Because if it was like, if God was the factor, then you would only have one version of Christianity. You would have only one version of that, you know? I mean, you wouldn't have different ideas as to what is morally right and wrong for, you know, different sects of Christianity. So
Yeah.
You're simply saying what is advantageous for our species, not to cut me off in traffic. I thought that would be advantageous for you, right? What anyone should or what anyone shouldn't do. Now, to me, our Bible explains this a little bit easier when the Word of God says that we all show the work of the law of God written on our hearts. And their consciences.
Well, he did say something right. Our Bible explains it way easier.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was
Yes, it does. That doesn't make it right.
Right, yeah. I was gonna comment on that. Like, it in some respects, it definitely can be easier to think in the Christian way than the scientific way. But
well, of course, it's easier.
Yeah, I guess that's where they get stuck. Like, it's easier. It makes the most sense to me.
Witness and our thoughts accuse us or defend us. That all of us know certain things are right and certain things are wrong, not because we've evolved in such a way that we all kind of agree that, well, that's advantageous to the species. We all know that it's right and we all know that it's wrong.
Except we don't.
We're made in the image of God, our great lawgiver.
Well, for the image of God, we do look a lot like other apes, so...
Well, and the only reason that anybody knows that something is right and or wrong is because they've been taught that. You don't start out as an infant knowing, you know, that, you know, killing people isn't cool. You know what I mean? That's not something that you're sitting there thinking about. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know it until you're taught it.
Yeah.
Christian worldview presents that in a way that is far more logical. In closing, I want to share with you guys some scripture.
Okay, good. We're
Sometimes
closing.
when we look at atheist and agnostic thoughts and worldviews, we seem so shocked by that. How can anybody believe that? We're living in the last days for sure, and I don't argue with that. I do think we are.
We're living in the last days, guys. Jesus is coming back soon.
They've been saying that for 2,000 years.
Yeah. But this guy believes it.
But I don't think any of this surprises God. I don't think God's surprised by humanity's
I love the
reaction
amens from
and
the crowd.
response to him. So if you've got your Bibles, I'm in Romans chapter 1, verses 18 through 25. You can follow along or on the YouVersion app.
You know, one thing I don't miss about going to church is flipping through the Bible. Because you'd have to memorize where all of the books are, and then flip to the chapter, and then flip to the verse with those really thin pages. It's a headache. And half the time...
Go ahead.
Half the time, it was hardly even worth looking up anyway.
Well, yeah, but see, here's how you get around that. You be Catholic. And Catholics don't have the Bible in church. Like, you don't have to turn to pages in.
What? When I was in church, they had like the actual list of Bible verses that they were teaching that day, and then you had ample time to find them.
Well, yeah, but there's not like, so when you go like a Baptist church or something like that, you know, in the front of the pews, they've got the things that have like the little things that hold all the Bibles. Well, in Catholic churches, they have the God, I forget what they called it. They're called, it's been so long, but they have the books that have like what you're doing that day. And they have the readings and the gospel that are going to be read that day and the songs you're going to sing that day. And I don't know why I can't come up with the word right now. It's escaping me. Somebody in the chat will know, I'm sure. But they have those, but like they don't actually have like Bibles in there.
Well, I don't know. At my Catholic church, they had Bibles.
You live in the South.
Yeah, well, I'm in the South as well, and the Catholic churches I would go to, they had like a reading of like they read a certain passage in the Bible, like the priest or whatever they called him, I forget. But that was it. We didn't have to flip through the Bible until I became not Catholic, Protestant.
Yeah. I don't know. I just remember like trying to flip through the Bible and finding it, and me spending the entire time.
They're called missals.
Missals, yeah. Me spending the entire time going through it, and then by the end of it, I would like not find it, and so I would just put it down and be like, I tried.
Yeah, and like the smaller, more obscure books like Amos. Where the hell is Amos? Eventually, I just got a Bible app, and it looked like I was playing on my phone, but it was whatever.
Yeah.
This is the Word of God talking about humanity's response to the question of God. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men.
You hear that, guys? The wrath of God.
Oh.
We're
yes,
subject.
Your loving, kind, forgiving God is very vengeful and wrath and full of wrath.
I mean, you can't see it, but I'm really just vibrating in my shoes right now. Well, flip-flops.
Who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them because God has shown it to them.
Oh, it's plain. It's plain because he's shown it to us. And we're repressing the truth in unrighteousness. Ooh.
Yeah, I really wish you would read off the talks about God is the God. What is it? It talks about the invisible things being seen. Invisible things are clearly seen, and I'm like, I don't think you get how invisibility works.
Visible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made. So they're without excuse. For although they
You guys
knew
have no
God, they did not
excuse.
honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things.
I love how he started off like, atheists, they sometimes have logical reasons for believing what they believe. And he was being real fair to atheism, and giving halfway decent explanations. And all of a sudden, at the end, he's like, the wrath of God will come to you. You're suppressing the truth. You're fools. You're believing foolish things. I think it's funny.
Well, I feel like the thing that he read off is just another way that the Bible gets on like actual knowledge, because the Bible rebrands knowledge as just knowing God, and it brands like any kind of actual real world knowledge as being of the devil or being bad or whatever.
Right.
It's done throughout the Bible. So I feel like this is just another example of it saying like, oh, people want to be all smarty pantsy about shit, but you just got to believe in God, okay?
Right.
Therefore, God gave them up in the lust of their hearts to impurity, to the dishonoring of their bodies amongst themselves, because they exchanged the truth about God for a lie.
Damn.
And worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever.
Oh, his voice
The
is
first
cracking.
thing we see from this passage of Scripture is that what all of humanity has done is, by our own unrighteousness, by the things that we want to do that are against the law of God, we've suppressed the truth. When we say suppressing something, we mean to forcibly put it into it, to prevent the development of it.
We
Anytime
know
a
what
question
suppress
of God
means.
rises up in our minds because we want to do what is opposite of what God tells us to do. We push that down further and further and further. We suppress what we know to be true, and that's nothing new. Throughout the narrative of human history, mankind has been on a campaign to suppress the truth of God.
So how do you guys feel suppressing the truth of God all the time? Just trying to push him away, trying not to think of him. Do you feel happy? Are you going to feel happy when the wrath of God comes upon us?
Yeah, I always hate how they branded suppressing the information, because I mean, we're not suppressing any kind of information about God. We're
I
just
just
not
don't
convinced.
give a shit.
Yeah, I mean, we're not convinced by everything that they say. So,
Yeah.
like, they always want to brandish it as suppression because they can't understand how somebody wouldn't believe in.
Yeah, and I think that why some Christians they go with this. They say unbelievers are suppressing the truth. They really truly know that there is a God and that it's my God. I think it's hard for them to comprehend that there are people who genuinely, truly think in a different way than they do. Because, like, to them, it's obvious. Like, oh, God exists. Oh, God made this. God made that. How could you not think that? And it may be genuinely difficult to think that people think in a different way. But they do.
Yeah. They do.
Yeah. But it looks like we're closing on the amount of time that I have for this. It looks like there may be like 10 minutes or so left on the sermon, but I'm going to have to end this here. So thank you, Godless Engineer, and thank you, KC, for joining me.
Oh no, yeah, I'm glad that we did this.
Yeah,
I really had a
thanks
lot of fun.
Thanks for having us.
Sorry if we extended this out a lot.
Oh no, oh no. This is good. This is good. But everybody check them out. Links in the description below, where you'll also find the link to the new channel for this, The Sinner's Pew. Subscribe to that, get that some views. This right here will be posted on that channel, though it may be audio only because of how much the stream was messing up. Sorry about that, but we do have the good audio intact. Eventually, this will be in podcast form. I'll give you a heads up for that, but definitely look forward to that. But anyway, thank all of you guys for watching, listening. I will see you next episode, and goodbye.